It wasn't long ago that Quiznos was a pretty big deal, but it turns out those tasty toasted rolls weren't enough to keep them on top of the food chain when it comes to fast food sub shops. They've closed more than 90% of their stores in the last decade, and here's why. No chain survives without the support of their franchisees, but Quiznos corporate has made it incredibly difficult for stores to turn a profit. Problems that start with their supply chain. Most fast food franchises negotiate with vendors who then supply locations directly and at a reduced cost, since they're buying in bulk. But Quiznos corporate buys all supplies from vendors, then turns around and sells them to franchisees. While most restaurants ideally operate with a food cost of 30%, Quiznos forces their franchisees to start with a cost of up to 39%. That means a Quiznos location needs to sell a lot more than a comparable Subway before they even break even. That backwards business plan has ended up breaking the franchise owners they should have been helping, and it's cost them. In 2006, around 10,000 franchise owners took corporate to court with a class action lawsuit. According to Forbes, they claimed corporate was essentially making them what's termed captive customers and forced them to buy supplies at grossly inflated prices that made it nearly impossible for them to be successful. Quiznos argued that they were simply passing market costs on down the line, but they were forced to settle the lawsuit and pay out a whopping $206 million to their franchisees. And that was just the start. Other franchisees sued separately, and at the same time Quiznos was fighting on that front, 6,900 franchisees in Colorado, Illinois, and Wisconsin filed a similar suit. They won $95 million, with a huge chunk of that going to franchisees who paid their fees but were never allowed to even open a restaurant because of ongoing location disputes. The entire point of an advertising campaign is to get people to buy a product, not make them undeniably uncomfortable. Quiznos missed that day in advertising school, and Business Insider called the creepy sponge monkeys from Quiznos one of the 10 worst ad campaigns of all time.
Quiznos subs! They are so good we need them robot-eating roll sauces barbaric!
Customers agreed. The sponge monkeys were all over Quiznos advertising from February 2004 until August of the same year, and if it feels like you were tortured by them for a lot longer than that, well, that just shows how much damage they did. They were so maligned that some stores took to posting signage apologizing for them, and in the first week, Quiznos Denver headquarters got around 30,000 phone calls from people wondering what the heck was going on.
I thought we were all good people here.
That's not the only time Quiznos missed big with a marketing campaign and ended up pushing customers away. In 2009, their uncomfortable attempt at making a sexually aggressive toaster oven hilarious once again fell short and did more harm than good.
Scott, I want you to do something.
Not doing that again. I burned.
We both enjoyed that.
In 2009, Quiznos tried to get some serious goodwill with coupons for free sandwiches, but it wasn't long before customers were getting denied their subs. Some locations didn't honor the coupons at all, others only accepted them if customers bought something else, and needless to say, people were not happy. Consumerist found that franchisees had a very good reason for not accepting the coupons. They weren't being compensated by corporate, and instead were expected to eat the cost of the free subs. A few days after the promotion started, an internal memo suggested corporate was going to start helping with the costs of the promotion, and at the time, they said they'd already had nearly 200,000 coupons printed. That's a ton of subs that could cripple already struggling franchises, and while Quiznos promised to make it right, that's not the kind of slap in the face that people forget. The very heart of Quiznos' problem has been the relationship between corporate offices and their franchisees. The two sides formed into very distinct groups that drove lawsuits forward thanks to the work of franchise owner Bhupinder Babbar, whose tragic story led to chain-wide recognition of owners' problems. Babbar owned 2 locations in Long Beach, California, and when Quiznos allowed another franchisee to open nearby, his sales plummeted. Getting no response from the corporate offices who had promised him no one would be opening nearby, he organized other struggling franchisees into the Quiznos Franchisee Association. That was in 2004, and according to the Long Beach Post, that was when Quiznos ended Babbar's franchisee agreement. By 2005, Babbar was slated to go to the Denver headquarters to argue his claims. Fearing the trip was going to cost him too much and he would lose what little he had, he walked into a Quiznos bathroom and killed himself. He left behind a note calling for an investigation into Quiznos and their business practices, and that note was released to the public. The Post says the nightmarish tangle of lawsuits Quiznos and their franchisees were embroiled in for years has roots in Babbar's franchisee organization, and that's the sort of thing no one can ignore. If you or anyone you know is having suicidal thoughts, please call the National Suicide Prevention Lifeline at 1-800-273-8255.